Hey everybody, this is Geneva of Geneva's Closet Talk Show. Please make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to Geneva's Closet if you haven't already done so right here on YouTube. And you can follow me on Facebook at Geneva's Closet. And you can email me at genevascloset22@gmail.com. Now, let's get into the news. Shout out to my subscriber and new friend, JT, for mentioning Cuba Gooding Jr. and his father, Cuba Sr., because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have done the research, which led me to discover some other things that we'll get into soon. You all know this handsome man, Cuba Mark Gooding Jr., born January 2nd, 1968 in Bronx, New York. We all know him as being an amazing actor who's won an Academy and Screen Actor Guild Award and just recently nominated for an Emmy as his portrayal as O.J. Simpson in the FX drama series, The People vs. O.J. Simpson, American Crime Story. But that's not it, because a lot of us was introduced to him as his role as Trey in Boys in the Hood, but we also remember him on Men of Honor, Jerry Maguire, Radio, y'all remember Radio, and a host of other movies. But I didn't even know that he was in The First Coming to America and that he played on MacGyver, and then come to find out his first job as an entertainer was as a break dancer with the legendary singer Lionel Richie at the 1984 Summer Olympics. Let me ask you all a question. Did you ever pay attention to the fact that his name is Cuba Gooding Jr., meaning that he's named after his daddy? I ain't never paid no attention to that. And did you ever question why he was named Cuba? I never even questioned that. Well, the reason why I'm bringing it up is because we're going to get into it. Why is he named Cuba? Because there's a story to that. And did you know that his mama and daddy sang music? I didn't know his mom and daddy was a musician, and his daddy actually got some songs out that I done heard before. Did you know? Did nobody tell me nothing? And did you know that his granddaddy's first wife was killed in Cuba due to Marcus Garvey Pan-Africanist movement? I had no idea when I heard that. I said, Rich. Well, don't worry about it because we about to get into it. Usually when I do these type of videos with this type of research, I explain it in a certain type of way. But this time, I'm going to tell it in chronological order. So, Dudley McDonald Gooding was born on December 6, 1890 in Bridgetown, Barbados. Now, Dudley is Cuba Gooding Jr.'s grandfather and Cuba Gooding Sr.'s father. In 1936, Dudley fled his native Barbados because he rejected subservience to his father and to the British Crown, which ruled Barbados at the turn of the century. Determined to elude the national obligation, he went to Panama and helped build the Panama Canal. He worked on ships all over the world, learned 9 languages, and settled in Cuba, where he immersed himself into the activism related to the Garvey movement. I did a little research to find out why would Dudley leave his native Barbados, because when I was looking up some other things, it said that he loved where he came from. And this is what I found, that in 1937, there was a labor rebellion in Barbados. It says on the eve of 1937 rebellion, Barbados, almost unchanged since the mid-19th century, was dominated by an elite that attempted to dominate society through mechanisms such as the Masters and Servants Act and very low wages. Politically, this group controlled parliament and was slow to implement changes to deal with rapid unemployment and poor living conditions. Economically, Barbados' sugar economy had declined while wages for workers still remained below 1 shilling per day. And then to compound these problems, it was class prejudice mixed with Panama, Cuba, Brazil, and the United States were now closed off to Barbados. All of these factors combined to create a sense of hopelessness and made conditions favorable for the outbreak of the 1937 labor rebellion. Now let's get back to the story. Remember where I left off. Dudley has fled Barbados. He is now living in Cuba, where he is a vowed African nationalist with the Marcus Garvey movement. And for those of you who don't know who Marcus Garvey is, you need to go do your research. And if you don't know what his movement was about, it was all about black everything. Black love, black families, black children, black wealth, blackity black on top of black. That's what it was about. So now Dudley is now living in Cuba, where he meets Spanish island, native Cuban. And obviously he must have fell in love and they got married while he is in this Marcus Garvey movement, which is complete opposite of everything Marcus Garvey stood for. But life was ideal for a time. However, soon afterwards, his bride, the Cuban lady, was brutally murdered. Reportedly, it was because of the couple's political activity. It was said, before she died, while on her deathbed, the devoted husband, Dudley Gooding, promised her he would name his first son Cuba after her homeland. When I heard that, I said, Rich, I'm going to have to let the people know this story. Oh my God, I know Dudley had to have been devastated because after that he left Cuba, which makes sense. And then he eventually went to Jamaica, back to Barbados, and then later he immigrated to the United States where he lived in Harlem, New York. Now, while living in the Bronx, New York, Dudley eventually meets a lady by the name of Addie Alston. Now, I'm assuming that Addie Alston must have been black because Cuba Sr., he don't look like he mixed with anything other than, he just looked like well, that's just my opinion. He looked black. Anyway, he eventually meets a lady by the name of Addie Alston, and they get married in 1944. And Dudley made sure to keep his promise to his first wife, Carmen, and I don't know why I kept forgetting to mention that his Cuban wife, the first wife, yes, her name is Carmen. But he made sure to keep his promise to his first wife, Carmen, even though he was married to a whole different lady in a whole nother place, because what did he name their first child, their son? Cuba Gooding. Dudley Gooding passed away in 1955 in New York, and a decade after his father's death, Cuba Sr. found his passion and love. It was music. At the age 22, Cuba Sr. married a lady by the name of Shirley Temple Sullivan. Now, Shirley Sullivan was in an all-girls doo-wop group called the Sweethearts. It was a 60s group, and in this group was her older sister, Barbara Sullivan herself, and another lady by the name of Kim Lewis. They had made songs called Laughing at Me and Love is the Thing. Now, like I said, this was in 1966. Her and Cuba Sr. got married, and just a year later, they had their first child, April, in 1967. Cuba Gooding Jr. was born in 1968. They also had another son by the name of Tommy that was born, and then their youngest, you all know Omar Gooding, who has played on pictures like Smart Guy and the movie Baby Boy. And just to let you know, in addition to Cuba Jr. and his brother Omar being actors, his sister April is also an actor and comedian, and their brother Tommy is a musician that has played with their father, Cuba Sr. Before I forget, let me give you this quick fun fact. Do you remember back in 1992 on PBS, there was a show called Lamb Chops Play Along with the lady by the name of Sherry Lewis, and she was like a puppeteer with the lamb or whatever. And remember that song? This is the song that doesn't end. It just goes on and on, my friend. I used to love singing that song. Well, come to find out, Cuba Sr. says that when he was 5 years old, puppeteer Sherry Lewis was his singing teacher. This is what he had to say. She taught me how to breathe. She taught me how to pronounce my words when I sang. The lyrics mean something. It is not just the music. I thought that was pretty cool. Back to the story. Now remember, Cuba Sr., he done got with Shirley. Shirley was with the Sweethearts. She done stopped singing. Now they done sat there and had these 4 kids. They married and stuff. They got to provide for the children. And then what had happened was Cuba Sr. had some friends and stuff that he had grew up with in the Bronx, right? And then they had came up with a group and stuff that they called the Main Ingredient. Now, Gooding was working for them sometimes or whatever as a backup singer. But then when one of the people on the group called McPherson became too sick to tour, that's when Cuba Gooding Sr. came in as the lead during live concerts. Sadly, McPherson was diagnosed with leukemia, and he passed on July 4th, 1971. But as fate would have it, Gooding proved to be the main ingredient that the group needed to garner several gold singles, including Just Don't Wanna Be Lonely. If that's how the song go, you know how the song went in the 70s. And then that other hit single, Everybody Plays a Fool, Sometimes Plays the Fool. You know how it went. Booked to perform at the Apollo Theater and other New York hotspots, the Main Ingredients, led by Cuba Gooding, joined the ranks of the most elite rhythm and blues groups like the Stylistics, the Intruders, the Shy-Lights, Persuaders, Delphonics, Spinners, OJs, the Manhattans, and others. Cuba Sr. is with the Main Ingredients. They're making their music, traveling around. And at some point, I guess he decides that he wants to focus on the music industry, and he leaves Shirley to raise the 4 children on her own. And in 1974, Cuba Sr. and Shirley get a divorce. Cuba Sr. had a back and forth relationship with the main ingredients because at some point he left the group to go solo with Motown. And then I seen later on he went back to the group again. So I really don't know what was going on with him and the main ingredients, but whatever it was, at some point him and his ex-wife Shirley decided to try their marriage out again because in 1995 they remarried and Cuba Gooding Jr. actually paid for their honeymoon in Barbados. I'm reading an article dated for May 2017, and it says, Cuba Gooding Sr., the father of actor Cuba Gooding Jr., was identified Thursday as the man found dead inside a car on Ventura Boulevard in Woodland Hills. The elder Gooding's body was discovered just before 1 o'clock p.m. Los Angeles firefighters and the LAPD responded to the scene, where after removing him from the car and trying to revive him, he was declared dead. Just hours before, around 10 o'clock a.m., a witness had spotted Gooding, 72, in the front seat of a silver Jaguar, wiping his brow. Surveillance video showed his car pulling up to the area around 3:30 a.m. Thursday morning. The death appeared to be the result of a possible drug overdose. Police found liquor and wine inside the car. We found drug paraphernalia and alcohol in the car. I won't comment on the type of paraphernalia because we haven't finished a search of the car. At the scene Thursday afternoon, a tent covered the body on a sidewalk, and police tape spanned 3 buildings. The silver Jaguar was parked just feet away from the tent as police investigated, at one point putting 2 bottles of liquor on top of the car. Cuba Jr. responded to the news of his father's death. The actor posted a vintage photo of his dad on Instagram with the words, "Eternal." I would love your insight on this. Don't you know how they say, as far as family, that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, and we have family generational curses? Well, what do you think about this whole situation with Dudley Gooding? So a lot of people would say Dudley, especially by him being a loyal Pan-Africanist for Marcus Garvey, should not have been messing with the Cuban lady, should not have married her or any of those things. And ultimately, that ended up getting him in trouble and her killed. Now, you skip a generation, so not Gooding Sr., but then you go to Gooding Jr., and he has some issues with some women that some say he shouldn't have been messing with. Don't you remember just a few years ago? It says on June 13th, 2019, Gooding was booked on charges of misdemeanor forcible touching and sexual abuse in the third degree in New York City, relating to an incident in which he allegedly groped a woman at a bar in Times Square. On October 10th, he was indicted on a separate additional sexual abuse charge. As of August 2020, 30 women have accused Gooding of unwanted sexual touching. Is that true? I don't know. I'm just telling you what the article says. Gooding was formally charged for 3 incidents, each resulting in misdemeanor charges of forcible touching and third-degree sexual abuse. On April 12, 2022, Gooding pleaded guilty to forcibly touching a woman at a New York nightclub in 2018, telling the judge he kissed the waitress on her lips without her consent at the New York nightclub. He also admitted to the 2 other alleged incidents of non-consensual contact, which took place in October 2018 and June 2019. The plea deal that Gooding reached where prosecutors called for no jail time. FYI, in 1994, Gooding married his high school sweetheart, Sarah Kapfer, if I'm saying that correctly, with whom he has 3 children, Spencer Gooding, Piper Gooding, and actor Mason Gooding. In 2014, Kapfer, if I said that correctly, filed for legal separation from Gooding. Gooding filed for divorce in January 2017. During my research, I read something that said before Cuba Sr. passed, he was working on a documentary called Everybody Plays the Fool, the Cuba Gooding story, or something like that. And it never came out, but I'm hoping that at some point this documentary do come out, because I would love to know the full details of what happened with Dudley and everything else with the Gooding family. Everybody, this was a lot of information that I simplified, but I hope you enjoy it and tell me what you think. I would like to know how you all feel about this situation, and while you are letting me know, could you please like and share this video and subscribe to Genevas Closet if you haven't already done so, right here on YouTube. And you can follow me on Facebook at Genevas Closet, and you can email me at genevascloset22@gmail.com. You all have a fabulous day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.